Hello everyone, and you're watching the Global Jobcast.
Hello and welcome to the Global Jobcast, a four-part series launched by Isaac in Hong Kong, which answers questions such as what are the key business and employment trends in Asia Pacific? And as youth, what could we do to equip ourselves to stand out in the changing business and world we see today? So in this podcast, we will cover different sectors and countries, and in particular, we will also discuss the topic of overseas working experience and how businesses see this. If you're interested, feel free to find us or send us your questions on LinkedIn or Facebook page. In our first episode, we are very honored to have Mr. Handi Kurniawan, Group Head of Leadership and Academies Learning at Jardine Matheson. Jardine Matheson is a multinational conglomerate with business interests in the fields of engineering and construction, transport services, insurance broking, property investment, and development. I am Andrew, the host of today. Hello, Handi.
Hi, Andrew. I'm glad you pronounced my last name well.
All right, we learned it from our Indonesian friend. To start off, we heard that you have come a very long way from a small town boy in Indonesia to a truly global professional. So can you tell the audience a little bit about your background story and your previous life experiences?
Sure. So I think my stories can resonate well with many people. Of course, if you come from privileged family, then you have all the luxury of access in terms of education and all that. So I come from a small city in Central Java, Indonesia. My friends used to joke, basically, when you come across my city, don't blink, otherwise then you will pass the city. Just to illustrate, it's pretty small city. But basically, it's all about resources, like I mentioned. So in that small city, then definitely you didn't have access to the best education, you didn't have access to the best network and all that. But it's really like a dream for me to think bigger and achieve bigger. So I moved from a small city to more and more bigger city that I can have access to good education, to the better education, to a better network. And from that small city, basically, long story short, I moved to a city that is known as a student city. And in that city, there were a mix of people and diversity of people there. Not just people in Indonesia, but also other countries as well. So we have more than 10 nationalities in that city. So it's unlike Hong Kong, that has always been diverse from the beginning, right, from the setup. I came from that humble beginning, and then after that, I catch up on my educations. So I learned English from school, and then I got the opportunity to go for student exchange in Australia. So that was my first overseas exposure in high school for a month. And then after that, after the university, then I became an intern in General Electric. So very lucky that I joined as an intern in a global company at the time in Yogyakarta. And when you enter the right company, then you are exposed to all these global things. So that was my first exposure to a really global professional. And there I was so inspired to meet with people who have high caliber, I would say, people who educated overseas, who have global experience. And I remember when I started my career, just 1 or 2 years in GE, then I saw head of HR who has experience working in Malaysia. And that made me think that how come an Indonesian can have a good career overseas, And I was so inspired by that. And I asked him how you can get a global job, how did you get it? And ever since then, I have a dream to also become an expatriate and go global. So that's my story at the early stage.
Right, it's an inspiring story, like grabbing the opportunities that you have when you're small and working your way upwards, right? So We also know that like you kind of worked in different corporations, different banks as head of learning and talent development. Perhaps from the influence of your head of HR in GE. So what are the kind of challenges and also rewarding experiences you have encountered over the years working as a career in this position of head of learning and talent development?
So actually, I have more interesting shift than that. My early career was in finance, actually, Andrew. So my career, I started as a finance for 6 years in GE as management trainee there, and after that, after 6 years in finance, then only I shift to HR, specifically in learning and development. And you asked me about what are the challenges in my position, right? So you could appreciate shifting from finance to HR, that's different functions. In finance, you work mostly with numbers. And then in HR, you work mostly with people. And then, of course, the way finance and HR operating are quite different. But I would say that having experience in finance can complement very well to my role in HR, especially when you are reaching certain position. Because especially when you are leading the function, then you also need to understand finance. Yeah. So back to your question, some of the challenges. Number one, to understand how HR operates, from working with mostly numbers and then now working with people. And in HR also, that was the first time that I lead people. So when you become individual contributor, basically it's all about yourself. When you are leading people, it's all about others. Yeah. So I learned about how to manage people, that people work in different way, people are being motivated in different way. So I learned about leadership there. That's number one. And as my career progressing, then I had a chance to work outside Indonesia. So from Indonesia, I worked in Malaysia and leading the region basically. So at the time, my portfolio was Malaysia, Brunei, and Mekong region, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. So there I learned about cross-cultural management. So that's a new challenge. And then from Malaysia, I moved to Singapore, and then I led the whole Southeast Asia countries, so 10 countries. And there I was exposed to larger cross-cultural challenges. You work with people from these 10 different countries, basically. And not to mention that you also, when I moved to Singapore, it's also our regional hub. And also, I need to learn about stakeholder management, which is important. Basically, you need to work up, you need to work down, you need to work both sides. So those are challenging, but it gives a lot of rewarding experience by basically working with people from different countries and different level.
So apart from this very well-developed career of yours, you've also gone on your own way and founded your own website, firstclasscareer.com. So it's a platform that offers consultation and also career advice to young professionals, right? So what was your rationale or vision behind of founding this company, and what were you aiming for, and what was your journey in seeking out this passion?
Good questions, Andrew. So this is actually new. Firstclasscareer.com is new, and basically like this. It was 2013 that I started to write my first book, Go Global, and it has been received very well. And it was in Bahasa Indonesia, and it became national bestseller in Indonesia. That means that the book really gives value to its readers. And then after that, I wrote numerous articles about career management, about leadership management, about cross-cultural management. And then subsequently, I wrote my second book, my third book, and And then recently, actually just this week, I launched my fourth book, the title called Great Advice. So I thought that I need a platform to combine all this knowledge so that I can share more. So when people seek my profile or want to benefit from my advice, they can see in this one platform, because otherwise people keep asking me, so how can you help? How can you help, right? What have you done? Da, 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 da. So now every time, they ask this question, then I can just send my website. But it's really about number one, harnessing all the knowledge and wisdom that I collect throughout these years. That's number one. And number two is really it's really my passion in helping people to grow. Andrew, I derive satisfaction when I see people grow, especially young people, young talent. So there are three types of people who ask my advice. So mostly I must say it's young professionals, those who just started their career. I've been mentor to many of them, and university students. And second type of people who ask for my advice is actually the parents of the students. They have lots of interest in helping their kids, so they come to me and then they ask for career advice, this and that. And then lastly, I also help senior professionals. Actually, they want to get better. Normally those who come to me, they want to get better. They are good professional already and they want to get better. That's why they need my advice and suggestions.
The parents are probably just an Asian thing, right? I don't imagine seeing that in perhaps other regions of the world. But anyway, get back to
Andrew. So recently, I got a message from my friend in Scandinavian country, though. So
wow. Okay, parents are getting more concerned about the child.
Yeah, everywhere.
Right. Okay. So no matter you're advising the parents or the students themselves, what kind of characteristics or qualities that you think talents, like young talents nowadays, they need to help themselves to become more competitive in the global job market? Like, what are the advice that you would give to these young professionals that are just starting off from their university and perhaps just entering their first job in the global job market? What are the things that they need to equip with?
Okay, so this question is specific. How to be competitive, right? So this is important questions. Yeah? Of course, there are many factors. So I encourage our friends here who listen to this podcast, take this not as a prescription, but as a guideline. That means that these are not the only way to success, because there are many ways to success, right? But to answer your questions, I think let's make it simple. PhD, passion, hunger, and determination. Those three things are important if you want to be competitive. Passion is very important. When I interview young talent to the organization everywhere where I work or something like that, and I can tell whether they have passion or not, and that will differentiate between those who are going to be successful in what they do or not, right? Let's say there are two people, there are two persons, A and B. A both have the same skills, but I can see the passion in them. If they are passionate, then they become more competitive and can be considered to the job. So that's number one. Hunger is very important, especially when you're young. You want to be competitive. If you have that hunger to success, you will learn or you will do whatever it takes for success. And that will make you competitive. If you don't have that hunger for success, then people will think differently. For example, they will just receive order and then do it. Yeah. But if you have the hunger for success, then you will be able to learn more. Yeah. And then you will you will do extra miles, which is very important. By doing extra miles, I mentioned this to our young professional, making it above and beyond all the time. Don't just do what is expected of you, do more, do extra miles. So you have to show the hunger in you. And lastly, determination. Determination is like, if you easily give up, then you won't make any difference. There are many examples. Young talent come to me and saying that I want to quit this internship, or I want to quit this job because I cannot make a difference. Then I ask them, how long have you been in the company? And they said 3 months. Yeah. So determination is very important. And I think by demonstrating this passion, hunger, and determination, that you can be more competitive.
As you mentioned, you've also been working a lot in different areas of the Asia Pacific regions. So what is it like from your experience working in these different countries?
So there are similarities and there are differences. So the similarity that I found now, actually, Hong Kong is my 7th country, Andrew. So just to give a perspective to our listeners. So I work in Indonesia, I work in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong. Actually, I returned after 20 years. So I worked in Hong Kong before 20 years ago, and then I work in Hong Kong again now, longer. I work in Beijing, I work in Vietnam, I work in US, United States as well. So the similarity is human being is the same. Human being is the same. Human being needs respect. Human being needs love. Human being needs connectedness. So human being is the same. Before I moved to Malaysia, for example, there's a little competition between countries. So, yeah. Let's say in Southeast Asia country, Indonesia and Malaysia, normally we are like a cousin. Sometimes it's a good cousin, sometimes it's a bad cousin. And initially, I didn't want to work in Malaysia, right? But after I moved there and I worked there, and I realized that Malaysian people are actually nice. And then when I work in other countries, people are actually nice. Of course, there are some good people, bad people, right? So that's the similarities. Now, what are the differences working in these countries? Yeah. Of course, there's a cross-cultural aspect to that one. So I would encourage those who are interested in cross-cultural management. There's a classic reference by Hofstede about disparity in power, the way people work in these countries and all that. But you can tell a difference. Like for example, if you work in Singapore, it's they demand productivity a lot because they don't have problem with infrastructures and everything. So working in Singapore demand productivity. If you work in Indonesia, then maybe productivity number 2, you need a good relationship with people. If you don't have good relationship with people, nothing gets done. You cannot just instruct by power, but you have to instruct by influence, for example. Yeah. And then where else? Let's say in the US, for example. So US also have you need to be able to speak up, for example, in the US. So if you work in Asia, then normally, especially when in my younger days, normally young people tend to be silent. They are not assertive enough. But in the US, even at a young age, you have to be assertive. You have to be able to speak all the time. You have to be able to express your opinion all the time. So I think these are some of the cross-cultural differences that people need to be aware of. If you work in Japan, for example, you cannot be too assertive in communication, right? So you need to know all this cultural thing.
So is this why you try to gather insights and wisdom and put it into the books about global career? Because on one side, you really need to have the same communication skills, the same soft skills to work with different people around the world. But on the other hand, it's you really need that experience to push you to develop even further from the limitations that you have on a same cultural backgrounds, right? So Maybe can you share with us some of your insights or that you have from your books, perhaps?
Yeah. So my first book and second book is the title called Go Global and Global Career. It's inspired by my personal experience and also my observation on how, especially talent in Southeast Asia specifically, or Asia in general, when they are working in multinational companies. And generally, when we say what are multinational companies? Multinational companies are basically American companies or European companies, right? And in my case, it was American companies. So again, I noticed a very obvious thing that Asian people who work in multinational companies, they most of the time they are struggle to position themselves in the place that they're supposed to be, whether it's at their early career or middle career or senior level. When people in their early career, they join multinational companies, like the example I just mentioned to you, in an international settings. And I see this very vividly for people in Indonesia or Malaysia and Thailand, for example, when they are together with their counterparts from, let's say, Singapore or Malaysia or Hong Kong. They shy away from the conversation. You know? They tend to listen and they hesitate to express their opinions. And then they struggle to be visible. So my books is basically talks about, first of all, how to get a global career, number one. Number two, how they can equip themselves with knowledge and skills so that they are able to not just being competitive, but being able to collaborate with people from different countries. And my intention of having this book is that they are aware of their strengths and weaknesses, and they're able to compete and collaborate. I believe that knowing this, understanding in advance, that will help them advancing in their career.
Right. You mentioned about strengths. So what do you see to be the strengths of Asians in general have over people from other countries?
Yeah. Of course, I think we also have to acknowledge our strengths, right? People from Asia Pacific compared to other countries, yeah, coming from the Western countries, for example. I think some of the strengths that we have, number one is being able to connect. I think in terms of relationship, I think we are good in terms of relationship because of our communication style. So as Asian, we are trying to understand the meaning behind the words. When people say something, we try to understand because sometimes yes, not necessarily a yes. Yes means that I listen to you, but not necessarily I agree with you, right? So we learn the term that there are 20 meanings of yes in Asia. That's number one. Number two, I think the knowledge of local market, definitely. Nobody knows better of our market than local talent, right? So I think we need to be able to leverage this. In terms of intellectual or something like that, I'm sure we are very competitive to other talents everywhere. But of course, we need to realize, I think the good thing about our Western colleagues, not just being able to express themselves, but also I think normally they have a very structured thinking, logical thinking, structural thinking, being able to express themselves. I think this is something that our colleagues in Asia need to also learn. So basically, we have to learn from each other.
And of course, the best way to learn is to really have that cultural interaction and working alongside with the colleagues from different backgrounds, right? So Isaac has always been trying to help young professionals, and university students, to seek for a global career development by creating overseas internship opportunities for university students to go for. And as a career coach yourself and also head of learning and talent development, and also from your own experience, like working with young professionals, do you think that those who do have overseas working experience have certain advantage over those who don't? And what specifically are those advantages or maybe disadvantages? I don't know, but yeah.
Frankly, I see the advantages, definitely. And I experienced this myself. And that's why I always support Isaac because of this reason, yeah. I remember in my first 2 years working in Beijing, that's the first time that I encountered Isaac. So I had some friends who was Isaac intern in Beijing. So and then I get to know them well. Although at the time that my understanding more about Isaac party than the working itself. But then I realized that Isaac is much more than that. The benefit of having global career definitely is undeniably very useful. Number one, you need to you'll be able to understand the diversity of people in the world. You will appreciate that there are people who are different than you in terms, not just in terms of background, but also way of thinking, in terms of way of life. And by being able to appreciate this diversity, it will really broaden your horizon. That's number one. Number two, by understanding that people work in different way and achieve something in different way, if you really understand this philosophy, then you will know that all this diversity will only enrich and help your decision-making process. We know that to solve a problem, you can tackle it in many different ways. And lastly, that it will enhance your creativity. You imagine when your career move up to the ladder and you become a leader, as a leader, the value of your leadership is by solving problem in a high quality decision making, right? Imagine if you only know one way, then you might not be able to solve like a complex problem. But if you know this diversity, there are so many ways to tackle a problem. I think that will be your advantage. So short answer to that, I see just advantages, not disadvantage.
So creativity is certainly something that I didn't expect from your answer. And like, you have to put it in more tangible way, terms or tangible explanation. How would your career would be different if you had not gone global?
Oh yeah, and this is through my observation, right? Because my career is also global. So I see people, number one, people who are not exposed with global exposure, they tend to have a narrow mindset of many things. For example, if people never go abroad, yeah, I don't say that they are stupid or anything. No, not at all. But they tend to have a microscopic mindset in seeing other people. For example, they can stereotype people. For example, like this. People in Indonesia think that all Malaysians are bad people. Or people in other countries are bad people. It's not the case. There are always good people and bad people. That's number one. And secondly, those who are not, who don't have global experience, then they try to see this as in a very a local approach. You think about if you are in the business, how do you scale up your business if you don't have this global exposure? You then limit yourself in that local market. If you have global exposure, then you know that it can be this way and it can be that way, or it can be other ways. So those are the two examples now, Andrew.
Right. Despite what you said earlier about the prejudices that some people might have over people from other countries or backgrounds, we see that nowadays, especially in this time and age, there's like increasing conflicts among different countries and in terms of geopolitics, and that also influences how many people how they see people from other countries and backgrounds, and it's sort of discouraging globalization or discouraging people to go overseas to work. So, do you believe that this sort of phenomena, like despite this sort of phenomena, like university students and graduates should still seek for a global career?
This is a very important question. In the past, you always talk about talent mobility, right? So talent can be mobile to other part of the world and all that. But now with COVID, it changes everything. Now we talk about talent immobility. So talent immobility, number one is because of the COVID and countries closed their borders and everything. And then the second thing you mentioned, very interesting point, which is the geopolitics. As we know, US, China, then China, India, then other countries have their own geopolitical dynamic. I always believe the advantage of going global. I always believe, but of course, in this situation, healthy comes first. Yeah, healthy comes first. Better safe than sorry. So I believe that everything has its own time. Once it is safe to travel again, then of course I think that it's very important, because even when geopolitics exists from time to time, from generation to generation, so it shouldn't be a factor to limit the mobility of talent. So even I really encourage people to travel to country that they hate, because if you have the chance to experience that, you might probably see things in a different way. It might be a transformational to your life, personally and professionally.
Okay, so it's almost the end of our podcast today. But on a final question, on a personal note, like, so I'm also a final year student seeking for a graduation job. What factors do you think like graduates or graduate students to be like me need to think about when they are considering what should they do after graduation?
So this is a very important question, yeah? No, really. So number one, I think it's very important that you find something that you love doing. It's very important because work will be part of your life. 80% of your life is basically work, right? It's a responsibility as a human being. So you gotta love what you do. So what I mean by this is, for example, if you love numbers, then you might consider finance as a profession. If you don't like numbers, then don't choose finance as a profession. You need to find a job because you know that you will success. Having said that, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't explore. I think Jack Ma famously give this advice, so I don't have to repeat. So when you are 20s, you can explore anything and you can fail in anything so that you learn, right? And then when you are 30, then you start to deepen your expertise. And then when you are 40s, then you should branch out. When you are 50s, you work with the young people. Back to your questions. Know what you love to do. Understand your strength and weakness. And number three, of course, then you don't stop there, but continue to learn, continue to explore, find the right companies where you can not just work, but you can also grow. So it's very important. Like in Jardins, have you heard about JETS program? Our JETS program?
Yeah.
It's one of the best management training ever. Okay. So no, really, it's not only because I'm working for Jardin, but it's really actually a great program because we have you have opportunity to be exposed in different businesses, different industries, and those kind of early job that you can consider.
Right. Thank you. So thank you very much for your insights, your stories, and also your sharing of experiences today. It's an honor and it's also a pleasure for me to chat with you today. Okay, so for listeners and who are listening to this podcast right now, stay tuned for our next one, and we'll release it very soon. And also follow our Facebook and LinkedIn for more information, and also drop in any questions if you have any. Okay, so that's all for today, and thank you very much, all of you, for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Hello, and thanks for listening to Global Jobcast. If you enjoyed the broadcast, leave us a like or comment below. If you would like to know more about Handi's career advice, check out his new book, Great Advice, at firstclasscareer.com/books. Again, it's firstclasscareer.com/books. Thank you, and have a nice day.